Hi there, everyone. My name is Jennifer Adams, and I'm the editor-in-chief with the Knowledge Hook Signature Leadership. And thrilled to be here today to have a live roundtable on the topic of social emotional learning and entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is a topic that we have not discussed before. We've had discussions on this series about SEL and the workplace. And entrepreneurs, of course, are our hope for the future. They're creating their own jobs and creating jobs for others. And so a really important discussion today, and we're excited to have it. We have three partners that are part of the SEL Global Leadership Series. The first is Signature Leadership by Knowledge Hook. And for those of you who haven't been with us before, this is a platform that is offering thought leadership to school principals, to district leaders and ministry and departmental leaders. We have a ton of teachers that join us each time, and happy to be continuing on with this. Our second partner is Karanga, the Global Alliance for Social Emotional Learning and Life Skills. This is a not-for-profit who is really looking at a thriving world and where all learners are enabled with the skills to succeed in school, work, and life. They're doing lots of great work. Dominic and I are both on the executive, and we're thrilled to be here with you today. And our final partner is Salzburg Global Seminar, a great international not-for-profit that came into being just after the Second World War. And they really look at helping current and future leaders to shape a better world. They do across all sorts of different focus areas, everything from education to healthcare to economics to parks and thinking about what sustainability needs to look like. And they've got fellows in 180 countries around the world. So those are our three partners that are here with us today, and excited to get into today's topic. We have with us, as far as registrants, we've got registrants from 5 Canadian provinces and territories, from 18 different US states, and from 14 countries. So should be a great discussion. Just before I hand it over to Dominic, just a reminder to everybody, please jump in the chat and ask questions, make comments. This is absolutely designed to be interactive. And I'm going to hand it over to my lovely colleague, Dominic Register, who is the interim program lead in Salzburg Global Seminar and a fellow executive member on Karanga. Dominic, over to you.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final SEL Global Leadership Roundtable of the year. Excited to have a conversation with two absolute experts about SEL and entrepreneurship. I think when we started Karanga 2 years ago, then when we were thinking about the rationale for really doubling down on social and emotional learning and thinking about the advocacy that we could offer to system leaders, to policymakers, to school leaders, and to practitioners around SEL, we thought about a number of different global challenges that societies and countries and school systems around the world are either grappling with already or will be grappling with in the next 5 to 10 years. And we felt back then, and still feel very much today, that social and emotional learning is a really legitimate part of the solution to all of these different challenges. And one of them is obviously the issue of employability. We know that many of our economies are changing very rapidly. A lot of the analysis about the kinds of jobs that will be entirely lost or partially lost to AI and algorithms varies considerably, but the consistent piece in the analysis is that it will be massively disruptive for jobs. And we also know that there is a very strong correlation with all of the predictive analysis around the sorts of skills that will be at an absolute premium in the economies of tomorrow, and the kinds of skills that social and emotional learning programs help young people develop. Entrepreneurial activity is a critical part of the economies around the world today, and also around social change. And a lot of the analysis says that it will increase, as more people move to portfolio kind of careers or doing parts of different jobs because of the impact of AI and algorithms. So really excited to have the chance today to speak with Pericles Vassiliadis from Endeavour and Juan Manuel Lopera from TOMI. As Jen said, we would love this to be an interactive session, so please feel free to put questions in the chat, share where you're joining from. If you've got comments on what is being said in the discussion, feel free to bring that in. If while the three of us are talking, it reminds you of something that you've read or a podcast you've seen or a TED talk you've watched, which has really informed your thinking about this, then feel free to put the links to all of those things in the chat as well. And feel free to engage with each other. If you see something that someone posts something that you disagree with, then feel free to engage. But as always with these sessions, the guiding mantra is to be tough on the issues but kind on each other. So the format that we're going to follow is in a second, Pericles is going to introduce himself and his work for about 5 minutes, and then Juan Manuel will do the same. And after that, we'll move into a discussion. We're going to talk about different definitions of entrepreneurship, about the relationship, obviously, between social emotional skills and entrepreneurship. Pericles will share some insights and updates from the work that he was doing in Doha last week at the World Innovation Summit on Education. And then we'll talk about the role that education systems can play in helping develop entrepreneurs of the future. So please chip in with any questions that you want along the way, and I'll try and make sure they get to the attention of Pericles and Juan Manuel. When you are sharing a question or a comment, please make sure that you're set to everyone rather than just host and panelists within the Zoom chat. Otherwise, not everyone will be able to see it and either take the link away or respond to you. That's more than enough of me. I'm going to hand over to Pericles, who's going to talk about his work with Endeavour and introduce himself. So welcome. Thank you for being with us, Pericles.
Great. Thank you very much. First of all, Jennifer and Dominic, thank you very much for your kind invitation to speak today with this amazing in this amazing panel. I'm really open to hear all the questions from our audience and see how we can engage more. So, hi everyone, I'm Pericles. I'm currently leading the education and talent portfolio for Endeavour Greece. Here in Endeavour, we're a global community of entrepreneurs. Right now, we're actually expanding our network to investors, to executives, and also stakeholders in education. We're working in multiple verticals. I'm currently leading the edtech, so I will focus more on that. Right now, what we're doing is we're trying to select the most high impact entrepreneurs in secondary markets like Latin America, Middle East, Southern Europe, Southeast Asia. We support them through networking, through mentorship, and through strategy advisory. We invest in these companies and also we help them give back to the communities that they have taken from. So we work as a platform for them to grow, scale up, and then give back to the community they're coming out from. Right now, we're in 40 markets, and we have a team of 500 people working closely with educational founders and executives and general stakeholders from all over the world in order to support them. And until now, we have selected more than 2,100 high entrepreneurs in 40 markets, and all of them have created more than 4 million jobs in the countries they are working at. And here you can see some of our global board people, high impact people from the US, from Europe, from Middle East that are supporting our cause and supporting entrepreneurs give back and scale up. That's all from me. I think it wasn't 5 minutes, but we will share a lot as we proceed.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pericles, and for introducing Endeavour's work to everyone. There's a lot of ideas and questions that your slides have provoked. So let's bring Juan Manuel onto the stage and let him talk about his work and introduce himself, and then we'll dive into the conversation between the three of us.
Thank you, Dominic. And of course, so happy and excited to be being part of this. I think the most important thing for me is talking to teachers. I just read the chat and I saw that there are facilitators and teachers listening to us today. So happy to talk to you. I'm working for teachers for a while, probably 12 years. My recent innovation was Tommy Digital. Tommy Digital is a platform built for teachers, mainly in emerging countries. I'm gonna tell you why for emerging countries in a second, but this is a tool focused especially for teachers to inspire their students. We really believe that a good teacher isn't someone that just teach mathematics or teach language or something like that, but a good teacher is who really generates inspiration in their students, and in emerging countries especially, they can generate some kind of mobility in the economic or in the society as well, in a very hard to understand society in emerging countries. So what we are doing actually is trying to close this gap between the classrooms in developed countries and the 80% of the planet that actually are classrooms without internet access for teachers or access to localized content, engaging contents, or tools for delivering digital lessons to the classroom or to these kids that are growing in a globalized world, however, in an environment with few opportunities, just a few opportunities for generating an economic growth and employability and so on. So what we created, it was an online subscription. If you can check tommydigital.com, you're gonna see a tool for creating gamified classes and assessments and so on. But the most important thing of this is that this platform can be used in offline scenarios or in scenarios with very poor quality internet access. In the most of the planet classrooms, there's not internet available for creating interactive activities or learning scenarios using technology. So Tommy device, which is this small device that we are manufacturing here in Latin America, so simulates internet access inside the classrooms and allows the students to use any device to connect to the Wi-Fi of Tommy and simulates their just navigating in an open internet, but completely educative internet in the classroom. So this is an online platform, but an amazing device that helps the teachers to deploy the contents even in those classrooms without internet access. So until today, we have thousands of classes already deployed. We have millions of minutes of classes that have been delivered with Tommy. But the most important is that we have a community of teachers creating and sharing classes with other teachers. If you, for example, decide to use Tommy in your classes in Canada, so many other teachers around the world are going to take advantage of it if you decide to do so. And many other students, we can take advantage of classes that probably a teacher in Latin America is not able to create it and to share it with their students, but they can use classes created by good teachers like yours and shared with them for creating amazing scenarios in these kind of classes. But for closing this introduction and talking about the social and emotional skills, I need to talk about a little bit my profile. I grew up in one of the most violent neighborhoods here in Medellin during the 90s, when Medellin, Colombia was the most violent city in the world because of the narco traffic and so on. And there was a teacher when I was 12 that changed my life, a teacher that didn't tell me about mathematics or science. This teacher told me about the empathy, about the resilience, about how to overcome all the limitations my scenario, my environment was covering me too. And this teacher, it converts me into an entrepreneur. I created my first company when I ended high school. I didn't have the money for going to the college. However, I have all the inspiration from my teacher for creating a company of hundreds of people working for innovation in education in Latin America. And we became one of the most important ed tech company in Colombia and Latin America. So this is the invitation I have to you, is that more than just teaching math or teaching language or any topic, what we need to do in the classrooms is inspiring our students to become leaders in their scenarios. This is more social emotional needs they have than only the hard skills they need to build. This is a final invitation again. If you want to start using Tommy Digital, you are actually supporting a lot of teachers and students around the world for having better classes, interactive classes through Tommy. This is open and free for you to use it. So Dominic, that's my introduction about what I'm doing and what Tommy is doing for social and emotional skills in emerging world.
Brilliant. Thank you, Juan Manuel. Thank you for sharing, some of your own personal story, which is really inspirational. One of the things that I think I'm looking forward to in our conversation in the next 45 minutes is that the two of you work primarily with different points on the continuum of entrepreneurship. And Juan Manuel, your work is more grounded in the classroom, and Pericles, you're working with emerging entrepreneurs. And I think that gives us a kind of interesting spectrum to frame the conversation around. What I'd love to start with as an opening question, just to check that we're all on the same page with this, is to get your respective definitions of entrepreneurship. So Pericles, what does it mean to you and how do you define it, either for you personally or at Endeavour?
Great, sure. Yes, I think there are a lot of definitions about entrepreneurship, but I think the one that I always use is that entrepreneurs are creators. So anyone that creates a business and an organization, anything that provides something back to the society is for me an entrepreneur. In the last years, we have seen a lot the rise of social entrepreneurs. We have the rise of people that are going out of college and then they're starting their own NGOs, not private companies, but NGOs. So for me, anyone that creates, of course, jobs and a platform that gives back to the community they are in is an entrepreneur.
Thank you. And we're going to talk in a minute, I think, about whether there are differences between the skills that entrepreneurs working in the private sector need and develop and entrepreneurs who are working with social purpose. So you've laid the ground beautifully for that. But Juan Manuel, for you, how do you define entrepreneurship?
Dominic, I think what you are saying is very important. I really think that in the mind of most of the people, there is a differentiation between a normal entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur. So, but I really think that by definition, entrepreneur need to be someone that is trying to solve a real problem of their community or a real problem in the world, and trying to make the life better of the people. So when you're trying to improve the life of someone else, so you are a social entrepreneur, you are an impact entrepreneur. So my definition of entrepreneur, it should to be someone that is trying to solve a real problem of the humanity. I really think that any new entrepreneur that you are going to have should to be someone trying to making the world better.
So we've got, creators and problem solvers. So there's probably some happy midpoint about people developing creative solutions to different challenges or problems that exist. So where do you each see social and emotional skills fitting into this? Pericles, maybe we'll come back to you first. So I imagine most people who are watching have some familiarity with social and emotional skills. I think the majority of the audience are coming from an education perspective, but where do you see the social and emotional skills contributing to entrepreneurship?
Sure, yes. From my experience, what I have seen is that a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, meaning entrepreneurs that are in the first steps, what exclusively investors are looking at are not their business argument or if the market is big or anything like that. They see a lot their social and emotional skills, how they communicate, how they can work among teams, how they can provide their vision to teams and lead them in order to fulfill that. So social and emotional learning is super important for all the first-time entrepreneurs and for all of them that are in an early stage. And I'm happy that we have a lot of educators here in the discussion today, because all these kind of skills need to be built from the school, from the early years of someone, you know, in the high school, in the primary school, or in the university, you know, because of course you can learn about business, you can learn about market research, you can learn about how to manage teams, but you cannot learn about social and emotional learning out of school because you don't have the time. Of course, there are a lot of opportunities, but the significant balance of school to help these people build this kind of skills are super important. So yes, that's how SEL is more entrepreneurship.
Thank you. I mean, I totally agree. I think the relationship around leadership and also, you know, how social and emotional skills help you develop relationships, which can be so important when you're starting a new initiative, is really important. Is that, Juan Manuel, in your experience and the work that you do, you know, directly with teachers and in classrooms, is there anything you'd add to that description?
Dominic, I think that the better example I can make for talking about it is related to the story I told you about myself. So if you remember the story I told about my teacher, this teacher was focused on how we can identify opportunities in the environment with a lot of problems we were growing up. So that empathy that my teacher taught us, that capacity for overcoming all the challenges we had, more important than any other thing that this teacher could tell us or could told us. So actually, I think I became an entrepreneur because this teacher has enough empathy for understanding how the violence would kill in my family and so on. So I really think that once again, as teachers, we inspire entrepreneurs because the social emotional skills we can teach to them, not because of the hard skills or a specific concept we can to teach to them. So I really think without social emotional skills, it's almost impossible creating real entrepreneurs who cares about the problematics the society has today.
Do you, Juan Manuel, do you distinguish between, oh, Pericles, I'm sorry, you were unmuted, you came in.
Excuse me, but Dominic, if you allow me, Juan is a real example of how social and emotional learning fits under entrepreneurship, you know. I think he said that, Juan, you said that you started your business out of when you graduated from high school. So there's no way you knew a lot of things about business when you are 18 years old, you know. You have to have the social and emotional skills. You just have that. So that's, I think Juan is a real example of how important are all these arguments to business.
Do you make a distinction between the skills that are needed for social entrepreneurship and the skills that are needed for private sector entrepreneurship, or is it a common core wheelhouse?
From my experience, I wouldn't separate these two categories. You know, in my mind, social entrepreneurs and private, let's say private company entrepreneurs are the same, but they focus on different things. You know, but they must have the same skills, and they eventually have the same goal, as Juan said, to solve a problem and provide back to the community with a solution and create something. So I think it's pretty much the same in my perspective.
Dominic, if I can add something, it's very important that an entrepreneur is not only a people who creates a company. I think everybody should to be an entrepreneur. And once again, from the definition I did before, I think an entrepreneur is someone that is driven by solving problems in the community and in their scenarios. So I really think that there's no distinction in the kind of social emotional skills that everybody needs to have for overcoming the problems, for understanding the others, and so on. So I really think, as Berkeley say, actually, I think everybody needs social emotionals for living in this world.
That's a really important point, isn't it, about that it's perfectly possible to be entrepreneurial, whether you're working inside a big organization or whether you're looking to tackle a problem in your community. There's an important mental model element to it. Yeah, so thank you for highlighting that. And I suppose that's one of the reasons why it was such a big theme at WISE this year, wasn't it? And you were both involved with WISE in different ways, I think, but Pericles, you led a day of programming, didn't you? So it would be great, just to get a readout from you about some of your observations of the discussion at WISE and who was contributing and how entrepreneurship is being viewed within the education sector.
Of course, yes. First of all, here at Endeavor, mostly we work with entrepreneurs and people that are business-oriented people. So we don't have a lot of time the chance to meet policymakers, or in our case, in the education space, educators or teachers. So for me, WISE was the perfect opportunity to give our entrepreneurs the opportunity to talk with people that are building their future employees, their future partners, and their future customers. And during WISE, yes, we supported the WISE with delivering a couple of sessions during the first 2 days, and actually. I saw a great appetite from all different kind of people being there: educators, investors, entrepreneurs, executives, big companies, universities, to come together and discuss solutions, how they can work together. And for me, it was very motivational, because I didn't have this point of view until last week. So yes, WISE was a great opportunity for all of us that working in different matter, the education, but we're all working towards this thing to come together, discuss, and of course set next steps and how we can go out of the WISE and set some specific activities we can do together.
You had quite an international delegation with you at WISE, didn't you?
Yes,
from
exactly. Yes, we brought together entrepreneurs from 5 different countries, from Greece, Spain, Jordan, US, and South Africa. Some of them were really big ones, like Go1 from the learning platform from South Africa. And of course, a lot of I suggested WISE to a lot of my entrepreneurs of my portfolio, and all of them wanted to come, but due to COVID, there was traveling is still a hard thing to do. But hopefully, in a couple of years, in the next WISE, we will have a bigger delegation, give the opportunity to more entrepreneurs to come and discuss with their peers.
Do you see, and this is for both of you really, do you see cultural differences across countries in terms of how people advance entrepreneurial behavior, or is it there are certain fairly global skills that everyone is deploying and using? So are there cultural differences within that international delegation that you had, Pericles, or Juan Manuel, in your work? Do you see cultural variation?
Yeah, sure. From what I have seen, different countries have different standards. So let's say that companies from the US are a lot more developed than a company from Jordan. But I don't want to mention that the only thing that I think we should keep from that is that even an entrepreneur from the US or an entrepreneur from Jordan or from South Africa, all of them had the same needs. And all of them were really open to connect with their peers and discuss with educators how can they work together and how can and do activities together. So yes, of course, there are differences because different market, different needs, different problems, but the motivation and the drive for all of these entrepreneurs were pretty much the same from whenever they were coming from.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Juan Manuel, and I'll just afterwards I'll jump in with a couple of questions from the participants. So Juan Manuel, over to you.
Yes, just a short overview of this. I'm linked to WISE because we are being accelerated by WISE right now. So what we just in 12 months of interaction with all the community of WISE, we realized what Perkins was saying is that actually we have a very diverse world. So we have very different teachers working for social emotional skills in Bangalore, and we have teachers working for the same in Bogota or in Medellin. So we are a very diverse world. However, we have the same problems in the entire world related to the climate change, related to the poverty. So we have a lot of same crises around the world, and we need that the next generation contribute to solve it. So the education has the same like challenges everywhere. So I really think that is the common line that open a great discussion between leaders around the world, between teachers around the world, and of course, between entrepreneurs around the world. And social skills, social emotional skills are like the base for talking the same language.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, isn't it, about, you know, the relationship between social emotional skills and empathy, for example, you know, and the importance of empathy if we are to work cross-border internationally across different communities to find solutions to the kinds of challenges that the Sustainable Development Goals look to mitigate against, or, you know, or something, you know, whatever the next COVID-19 type challenge might be. Jen, you wanted to bring in some of the questions from, I saw Carolyn had a brilliant question.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to bring in Carolyn, and Ellen and Guido have jumped in with some questions and comments. I'll start off with Carolyn's because hers is the one that's most connected to kind of what we were talking about now. So both of you talked about the idea of the social emotional skills are intercultural, that there's common problems out there and the skills are relatively similar that are needed. The question from an educator standpoint that Carolyn brings up is, are there some programs that can work interculturally, or when you see programs around for entrepreneurs, do they need to be adapted to work in each of the different contexts? And both of you have experience from an organizational standpoint and from getting programs out there. So would love to hear your comments on that.
Yes, go on.
Okay, very close. So, you know, this is something that we find all the time in the field in social emotional skills, but also almost in any topic. And I really think that every content needs to be localized according to the scenario where teacher is. So in the most of Latin American countries, for example, in K-12, the government dictates some kind of standards for teaching social emotional skills and so on. However, the teachers are who needs to create their own strategies, pedagogical and didactic strategies for teaching or for developing the skills they want to develop. So I really think that teachers need as much autonomy as possible for finding or figuring out the way for developing these skills in their students. Only teachers knows their students as much as possible for developing these skills on them.
Yes, I totally agree on that. From my experience, what we're doing right now with higher education institutions like Harvard and MIT, but we're right now trying to do that also with high schools, is that some of our entrepreneurs are open to start specific programs for first with universities and then with high schools that will provide with a school with a specific problem company faces, and then they will give the opportunity to the students to work in teams on that problem, and then let's say present it to the company. Of course, all of that in cooperation with the teachers and the schools. Of course, for the universities, the problems are much more business oriented, but for schools, what we're right now trying to build is we're working on how the entrepreneurs can provide specific problems to the students that will help them develop social and emotional skills like teamwork or communication skills and stuff like that. that of course will support the students in the life after school and after university. So there is a lot of appetite on that. I'm not aware of a lot of programs that are doing that officially, but right now we're working a lot with entrepreneurs and specific companies that are really open to discuss with schools and to form this kind of programs privately. And of course, someday this can be much bigger.
Do you think that has the pandemic and the kind of experiences of school closure and school shutdown had an impact on this? Are you seeing more interest? Because there's kind of two slightly conflicting tensions, I think, in education systems in many parts of the world at the moment. One is, the kind of recognition of the learning loss and the disruption to learning that has occurred, and the need to really double down on curriculum content and help students catch up. And then the other is the kind of realization that, the kind of freedom or liberation that school closure offered in some contexts, and that learning can happen in many different environments, and there's opportunities for bringing new elements to the school experience, so the social component of it, the acquisition of non-academic or non-cognitive skills. And so, with your respective work, and maybe Juan Manuel, you're a little closer to this because so much of your work is in the classroom, but have you seen an increase in interest from teachers in the systems you work with?
Dominic, you make me remind something very important for me, is that with the pandemic, we have a lot of scenarios where teachers are talking about how to virtualize the learning. And you say like, okay, that's the consequence of a pandemic, that teachers are more interested in making innovation through technology for K-12. However, I'm not agree at all with virtualizing K-12. I really think that we are like training humans for interacting in a human world where the people need to interact each other with the other. So we need to train these people in emotional, social emotional skills, and the unique way for doing so is through the interaction, real interaction between them. So I really think that in this post-pandemic age that teachers are gonna live, they need to be more concerned about the interaction of all this generation that just passed through 2 years of lockdowns, and they didn't interact in person with the people, and now they're gonna come back to a society with a social distancing premise and so on. So I really think that this is the moment where teachers need to be very aware about how social emotional things will impact the new generation of humans that are being like former or trained in the schools today.
That is a message which is falling on fertile ground here, which is why a lot of us come to these roundtables each month, is because that belief is shared. There are some fabulous questions and comments coming through in the chat. Thank you very much for all of those. I think it would be interesting. One of the challenges that I think we often face in these roundtables is it's really easy for us to sit around and make recommendations to teachers, and not being fully cognizant of just how busy and how much pressure teachers are under in education systems around the world. And there's always, we talked on a previous roundtable about initiative fatigue, I think, and there's always a new thing which teachers are being encouraged to do or asked to do or told to do. So if you had to each make a kind of recommendation or a series of recommendations to education leaders around introducing entrepreneurship, what would be your top recommendations for each of you about how you go about building this in to education systems, or where in the curriculum it might sit?
Sure, I can go on that. Yes, I think one obvious solution here is, in order to to involve entrepreneurship in schools, you need, of course, to bring entrepreneurs in schools that will provide all the knowledge and all the experience that they have taken, and also they will inspire the students to become entrepreneurs yes, to become entrepreneurs. So teachers right now should be open to discuss more with entrepreneurs, should be open to join programs like the one I mentioned before, that will provide them with the opportunity and also give entrepreneurs the space to talk and inspire students. And of course, one simple thing is to listen to the students, to listen to what they are looking at, what people they admire to, and shoot for them, and try to bring them in schools and get them as thought leaders for the students. I think it's one obvious solution in my perspective.
I think, Dominic, there's a couple things that we suggest. Actually, we suggested here in Latin America to principals or directors and teachers. They need to do for creating this new generation of entrepreneurs. The first thing is every learning that we are trying to give to the students need to be contextualized. So if a teaching is not related to a real problem of the environment of the students, so it's hard to create that connection between the capabilities we are given or skills we are given to the students and the real problems they're facing in their communities. So project-based education, for example, is a good strategy for following, for training this kind of new entrepreneur. I apologize if I don't use the right words in English, because I have a short dictionary, a short vocabulary in my head, but that's mainly. And the second thing is, once again, the autonomy to the teachers to transform any base curriculum that the government or the school proposed to them. We need to give to them the autonomy for iterating this curriculum or these strategies as if the teacher is an entrepreneur as well. So making different iteration of the strategies they are following, it's needed, giving autonomy and the freedom for trying new things according with the reads they did from their students.
Thank you. Your vocabulary is astonishing in English, so goodness knows what it's like in Spanish. I think there's a really interesting program that does speak to what both of you are saying from the Smithsonian Center for Science Education, which takes a very triangulated project-based approach to looking at the application of high school science content to local challenges. So they use a sustainable development goals framing and look at how do the challenges that different sustainable development goals look to address manifest themselves in local communities, and then how does what you're learning in your science high school classes help you develop solutions to those challenges. And then the third corner of the triangle is the social and the emotional skills that you need to get these that students need to get these projects off the ground, which I think is a really great example, and they've got loads of free resources. That one is specifically for high school students, though. Is there in both of your experiences, is there an age cap for introducing these kinds of activities? Is it better to start with primary school or younger children so that it becomes a way of thinking and a way of working throughout school experience? Or do you need to be a little bit older to kind of get into the problem solving?
I think problem solving should be something that you start growing since as younger as you are is the best, you know, from my experience. But right now we are working mostly with universities and high schools, so I don't have a lot of experience for younger ages, but I think it's obvious that as younger as you are and as earlier you start growing your problem solving skills, it will be better for you when you are in the high school or in the university. You will be much more prepared.
Dominic, I could be wrong a little bit, but almost the 40% of the students in Colombia left the school before 5th grade. So if you don't catch them or catch their attention before they are in 5th grade, so you're gonna lose them, and the violence and the conflict is gonna have a new people on their lines, you know. So I really think that it's harder as to create social and emotional skills as older is the people. I really think this is something that needs to start from the family, probably in homes, and this need to be extended, of course, to the schools and teachers, and this need to be happening from the very beginning in the educational journey of the students.
How old is 5th grade in Colombia? Is that
5th grades need to be like 9 years old?
right? So the transition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you need to be an entrepreneur in order to teach entrepreneurial skills? I wondered if, you know, in either of your areas of work, you have programs which are specifically for teachers to help them develop entrepreneurial thinking and entrepreneurial behaviors so that can be passed on to students.
No, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to teach entrepreneurship. I think, as Juan said, entrepreneurship is somewhat solving a problem, and as I said before, entrepreneurs are creators. These kind of people are not only the CEOs of a specific company. They're like being the middle management. They're like leading NGOs. There are politicians, or I don't know. There are many different jobs that are requiring problem solving and being creative and providing the vision for the rest of people to follow you. So I think that you don't have to be an entrepreneur to teach entrepreneurship, but of course it's a plus.
This could sound a little bit romantic, but I really think that the best teacher is an innovator, and it's an entrepreneur. As Berkeley says, an entrepreneur has a project. And what is the most important project if it isn't the student life? So each one of the kids you have in your classroom, there is a project, a life project. It's gonna be a lawyer, it's gonna be a politician, it's gonna be a people that could change the reality and the reality of all their society. So this is a huge project each teacher has. So I really think that each one of the teachers we have in our classrooms around the world are innovators and entrepreneurs.
That's a really great point. Going back to each of your definitions at the very beginning of what an entrepreneur is, you know, and it was creator and problem solver. And, you know, that is absolutely core to teaching. It is about, you know, helping students solve problems and create new career paths, new opportunities, new ways of looking at the world and understanding it and navigating it. Do you think that, or are you aware of initiatives where entrepreneurship is a kind of separate subject in the curriculum, or do you think is it more important for it to be embedded across multiple subjects? And, you know, maybe part of the conversation is about how we recognize and identify that, you know, when you're tackling a maths problem, or when you're tackling, you know, you're doing a piece of writing for history or for geography, whatever it might be, that you're developing entrepreneurial skills.
I think I will agree totally with the second option. Entrepreneurship as class on its own, it's not so useful, at least earlier in the early years of a kid, but I think different subjects require different kind of skill sets, and all these kind of skill sets, of course, lead to someone becoming an entrepreneur. So teachers should recognize what this kind of skills, what each project, what each subject provides, what kind of skill sets provide the students, and then try to develop multi-subject projects that will support the students.
You know, here in Colombia, for example, like 10 years ago, there was a new law that obligated to schools to teach entrepreneurship. And you know, that didn't work. Until today, I don't know any school with a success program of entrepreneurship. Most of my generation school, when we finished high school, there was a lot of people that became entrepreneur, and we became entrepreneur because our math teacher turns us into entrepreneurs. It was a math teacher, you know. So the empathy is something that need to be in each one of the people or each one of the teachers we interact with. The understanding of the family problems we have, the understanding once again about the scenario we are growing up, that need to be something every teacher understands and work on it to improve the social emotional skills of the students. I really think that it's impossible to create a success program for building and producing entrepreneurs as a factory.
Knowledge Hook has a core audience of maths teachers because they do a lot of work around math reform. So everything you're saying is being very well received in the chat. So we're almost at time, but to close out, I wonder if I could ask each of you to share the most important lesson that you have learned from your work with schools or your work in entrepreneurship. If there was one critical takeaway you'd like the people who've been with us in this call who are watching on demand to leave with, what would be your top recommendation or top tip?
Sure. I think one of my thoughts, it came out of WISE, the WISE Summit we mentioned before, was that there are a lot of different stakeholders in education, like policymakers, educators, schools, entrepreneurs, all this kind of stuff, all this kind of people that want the same thing, have the same drive, maybe have the same problems, but they don't talk together. So they cannot share the solutions or the problems they have. And I think WISE was a perfect opportunity, as I said, for all of them to come together. And I think that we should do that more oftenly. Bring together all the educational stakeholders, discuss the problems, discuss solutions, and then work together in order to help students grow and become entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Pericles, and thank you for everything you've shared, and for being part of this roundtable today. Juan Manuel.
Dominic, it's impossible to me, like, make a conclusion around teachers. Of course, as I told you before, teachers is the most important part of my life story. So I really think that the most important thing everybody needs to know is that any innovation initiative, any transformation of education initiative need to go around teachers. Most of initiatives of innovation in countries we are working in are going around technology or going around the curriculum, and they forget going around the teachers. So that's the most important thing I wanted to suggest to leaders and to teachers as well who listen to us, that the teachers is the most important part of the education ecosystem. So everything we do should be around teachers.
I completely agree with that. And I think, the way in which you've both shared ideas about thinking about, the overlap between entrepreneurial skills and fundamental skills for teachers, that all the kind of activity that all teachers are involved in almost every day in the classroom is a really interesting takeaway for me from this conversation. So thank you both very much indeed for being part of this and for sharing your insights and expertise, and both doing it in a foreign language as well, which is always awe-inspiring. And thank you very much to everyone who's joined us throughout the year for these SEL leadership roundtables. It's been an absolute pleasure to be part of them. I'm going to hand over to Jen, who's got some important announcements.
Yeah, just before I get to the announcements, that was an incredible conversation. And, I loved a couple of the points that you were making, that we're all entrepreneurs, right? And we have to develop those skills, not only in our students, but we have to support our teachers as they develop those skills. And Pericles, I loved how you talked about the idea that there are a whole bunch of stakeholders that can help make sure that these skills are being developed in our kids. And it's not just the education system, we can't do that alone, but it's business people and entrepreneurs and ministry people they're willing to come in and help us do that together. So inspiring. And I got a lot out of it. And I'm sure the participants and those that will watch this on demand got it as well. Just a couple of quick comments. Most of you, or some of you, have seen, we also have, Knowledge Hook also has a math leadership series. And again, you can access these resources and these on-demand videos. They are free of charge and anyone is allowed to do that. So welcome, join on. And just to give you a little bit of a sense, one of the things that's really important to Dominic and I and to Karanga is that there's a reason why this is called the SEL Global Leadership Series. And again, a huge thanks to Pericles and to Juan Manuel for doing it in a second language, but B, bringing us stories from Greece, from Colombia, from Latin America, from some of the countries, Pericles, that you've been working in. It's really important for all of us to hear what it looks like out there. And this is a podcast, Dominic and I had an opportunity to go in and work with the Gulbenkian Foundation and some of the projects that they're doing in Portugal. And Rui Marquez is doing an amazing piece on building social emotional skills and well-being in Ubuntu Leadership Academy. So there's a podcast here that describes how that's getting at it. And I have no doubt that some of the kids coming out of those programs are going to be the entrepreneurs that are working with Juan Manuel and Pericles in the future. So that's something that you can access as well. We are going to wrap this up. As Dominic said, we're obviously breaking for the holiday season, and we will be coming back with you with a great series that are coming and will be happening in January. So Juan Manuel, Pericles, and Dominic, thank you so much for leading this conversation. It's been fascinating, and we look forward to seeing all of you in the new year. Take care, everyone.